Everyone, in today's highly competitive business world, more and more organizations are moving to a project approach, whether launching a new multi-million dollar product or planning an office move. Project management will enable you to deliver high quality results on time and within budget. Hi everyone, I'm Saurabh Pandey, and in this video I'll be covering some of the core concepts of project management, specially designed for beginners who are new to project management. I have over 12 years of experience and have done development, have done testing, solution consultant, and as well as project management and product management. So I can definitely bring all these experience in my teaching and training and consulting. In this video, I'll be covering the project management processes, project planning methods, a very important concept in project management, critical path, risk management, and finally documentation. These are some of the core concepts of project management, but not all. The whole idea of covering this contents is to enable the beginners to start somewhere. So, for the beginners, I would like them to think for a second and discuss what exactly a project is. Is it an opportunity or is it a problem to solve? Project must have one particular thing that you all should be aware of. As a new project management to a new organization, what do you think will be your first step? All these questions will be clarified in the coming video. So let me start with the project management processes. Project starts with initiation phase. It goes to the planning phase and then execution, controlling, and finally the closure. So as you have understood, a project must have a start and an end. Project should not go forever, which definitely doesn't look or doesn't will make any sense that it actually is helping the business. So project management fundamental says that when it starts with a plan. It starts with a plan where you identify all the required stakeholders, you identify the work, you identify the environment, you identify the all the possible tasks, you identify the dependencies, and then you get into the execution phase. And then you do controlling through risk management, through change management, and finally, the closure of the project management happens by defining the closure document. So, what exactly planning means? Planning means defining the objective. The objective should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timetabled. You, as a project manager, you must have a clear understanding of what am I going to plan? What are the requirements? Are those specific? Are those something that you can measure, you can estimate? Do you see that those requirements to be achievable in your organization, in your environment? Just try to assess those requirements and see whether it is really achievable. Do you feel those requirements are relevant to the market? relevant to the users, because sometimes customers do come up with a requirement which do not seem to be relevant to the market. So as a project manager, if you are aware of this particular area, you can guide the customer to build much better trust. And finally, the objective has to be timetabled. It has to have a definite schedule, a start and an end. The other phase of planning talks about WPS, work breakdown structure. When you get the requirement from the customer or the client, you first define all the possible work areas, right from the ideation to the production launch. These work areas are something which you can, in case of software development, you can define as a design phase, a development phase, a execution phase, a tester phase, or something you can define as a milestone in between. This is a traditional project management framework. So people coming from agile or scrum methodology might feel that why we are doing all these things. So let me make you understand that these are the old traditional ways of project management which still holds good for some of the clearly defined requirements. So even if your requirements are fast changing and requirements are not very clear or concise, then definitely defining this would be little difficult. But in case of requirement being very much clear and defined, then definitely this can work. Once you have defined all the work areas, you have to define all the tasks associated to each of the work areas. And that tasks should be very much specific. It should be assigned to a particular owner who will do that or perform that task. And it should have a time estimate associated to it. So you would have understood that in the project management world, we always talk about tasks, time, schedule, and these are the terminology which you will frequently use in your day-to-day project tracking. Next thing would be to rank each task in the priority order. You need to understand which task needs to be done first. The best thing would be to ask yourself and ask your team, if I want to do this task, then where should I begin? What I should be doing first? And that will become your priority first. Then define the time for duration of the each task, and finally the dependencies, how they are related. There may be possible that one task is dependent on several other tasks. So what are the ways to handle such scenario? You need to bring it in your project plan. Now understand the very core concept of project management, that is critical path. It is, in simple terms, is the longest duration from the start to end, which will define the project flow. So as you can see in this diagram, the project has 5 milestones and 10 through 50, and there are 6 activities A through F. So the critical path in this particular project are activities B and C, or it can be ADF. So this is giving a minimum project time of 7 months. So one of the things that critical path helps is to define your project duration, the longest hour that it can take. And this critical path, if it is disturbed, if any of the activity get impacted, then the project manager will know the first that your project schedule is getting impacted, and the time by when we want to deliver the project will get impacted. So that is one of the reason critical path helps a lot in many of the projects that we today execute. Now let's come to understand the risk management. Risk management is a very core concept which even in today's agile and scrum methodology they definitely apply this principle, the risk management. And it is a very common sense for everyone, not only the project manager, to contribute to the risk management, to the risk plan. Because a good risk management can make the difference between a viable and non viable project. You may come to know through the risk assessment that looks like this project is not viable. And it can be a very possible case. So, risk management has one of the core concept of risk assessment where you document the likelihood of each potential adverse incident occurring. You document the severity of the impact and the measure needed to reduce the likelihood. This exercise would help the project manager and the team to know where do we stand and can this risk impact our critical path. What can we do to avoid this risk? Risk can be of two types, external and internal. So, for all the beginners, it is very important for you to understand what are external risk and what are internal risk. External risks are something which are outside of the project team, which your project team also cannot manage. Those are related to markets, changing in the market. If you're building projects which are related to finance, market conditions can impact your project. Environmental condition and the legislations are the other example of external risk. And internal stem from the project team. So while executing the project team might come up with a risk that this particular technology we are not aware of, and that something would require some training, or that skill is something we are not having the full idea about. Or you can have conflicts between your team members or the culture in which the project has been executed within your project team. So, as a project manager, you need to manage all this internal risk as well. There are some risks which are unavoidable. For example, bugs, which are sometimes called issues as well, which comes during the software development. And the bugs are something which can be a showstopper to the project and should be defined and should have a remediation plan in place to tackle these bugs. So, this is the high level overview of what risk management is all about. Finally, the documentation. Though the people from the Agile or Scrum world would not agree to the documentation part, but if you're dealing with the external client and companies and outsourced companies, then definitely documentation helps make things very much clear. What are you testing? What are your design and technical challenges which are there in the document? And if it is documented, it can be helpful to any other team who will be taking over after this project is over and gone into the maintenance phase. Functional document would help to understand what all system components involved in this particular project, in this system, and how those components work. User manual will help the actual user of the system to understand how they can use this application. So this is one of the areas which in today's world can be challenged, that the system itself should be self-explanatory and there should not be any user manual, but there are some complicated workflows that gets defined which require user manual. For example, you're defining a bug tracking tool, and the workflows can be something that not everyone will get to know immediately unless you have a user manual defined for it. Rollout plan, how you are going to the market, what is the launch strategy, what are you thinking before you get into the market. That documentation, if you do, then that exercise will help you get into the market with efficient strategy. Lesson learned, as a project manager and a project team, you must understand what are the areas which could have improved, which we can apply to the next project. And finally, the contract closure document, which will identify all the activities and tasks that which we have identified initially, the milestone which we have agreed earlier, have we closed that or not. So particularly with the clients who are very much looking for a document, or who is very much always uh, you know contract intensive and legal intensive customers, for them this particular document is very much needed. So this is some of the core principle and concepts that I covered in this video. In coming videos, I will try to dig more into deeper of the project management philosophy and framework. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.